Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, when we spoke on Friday, it was just after the breakup of the Istanbul meeting, which basically didn't really lead to anything very much other than an exchange of prisoners of war, 1,000 on each side, and a promise on both sides that they will put together, I think, a plan for a ceasefire, or the conditions that need to be fulfilled for a ceasefire, and then see where it goes from there. So the prospect of another meeting has been left for the future. And then over the weekend there was a conversation between Lavrov and Marco Rubio, and now the immediate response from the Europeans after the end of the Istanbul meeting was entirely predictable. Here we have Macron saying the past few hours have shown that Russia has no interest in a ceasefire, and that unless there is increased pressure from the Europeans and Americans to achieve this outcome, it will not happen spontaneously.
Okay, well, really profound from the
Very,
from.
very profound,
Okay,
but
well,
he
okay, I
never
get
said this
it.
before.
Yeah, that's great. That Russia has no interest in a ceasefire. Yeah, they don't, and you know that. Okay, so I mean, why are you lamenting it? Okay, Russia didn't go there to talk about a ceasefire. It went there to talk about how to end the conflict. They're two very different things, everyone. And George and I have to say it over and over again to point out that this is fraudulent reporting. This is dishonest reporting.
Exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. No, has no, and no interest in a ceasefire. Oh, they've shown that. They have told it, a month ago, February. That's February the 12th, when it was when they made what Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz and Zelensky issued that proposal. We've known since then, and so they're sort of suggesting this. Wow, this is some new disclosure. Wow, I did not know this.
Breakthrough,
Yeah,
breakthrough.
whoa. Oh, well, we better apply some pressure. And then we have Sukir Starmer. People in Ukraine and across the world have paid the price for Putin's aggression in Ukraine and across Europe. Now he must pay the price for avoiding peace. So
Okay, all right, all right, all right. If I objectively, how does this add value to the conversation?
no, not at all.
It doesn't.
Nothing. Nothing. They are just desperate somehow to get Trump into this, to impose these sanctions, impose the sanctions already. And then Trump issued this tweet in all caps. I will be speaking by telephone to President Vladimir Putin of Russia on Monday at 10 a.m. The subjects of the call will be stopping the bloodbath that is killing, on average, more than 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week, and trade. I will then be speaking to President Zelensky of Ukraine, and then with President Zelensky, various members of NATO. Hopefully, it will be a productive day. A ceasefire will take place, and this very violent war, a war that should never happen, will end. God bless us all. So that's his schedule. 10 a.m. that he's going to talk to Putin. Then he's going to talk to Zelensky, and then with Zelensky. So he's going to join Zelensky in another conversation with various members of NATO. I wonder who those various members are. So they're going to have another one of these conversations. And
Well, I mean, what's interesting here is that it could go a number of ways.
yeah,
It easily could go a number of ways. And it depends. First of all, I would like to know, just because it'll help me think about this correctly, is who's briefing him before these calls?
it's a very
I'd
good
like to know
question.
that.
Right.
We'd like to know that.
Mhm.
Is it one person? Is it a collective? Is it a one pager with a picture on it? I would really, really like to know because Trump wants this to end. I don't
Yes.
think anyone can deny that,
Right.
okay?
Right.
But I mean, we know what happened in the first administration. He was sabotaged.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Okay. So it could go a number of ways.
Right. Ex-
Could
ex-
Is it possible that
Right.
Trump will give Zelensky and NATO the riot act? Yes, it is
Right.
possible.
That's exactly. And this is why I want to show you um, something which was Trump gave this interview to Brett Baer also on Friday evening, and just watch the way Brett Baer is trying to pressure Trump into imposing sanctions on Russia constantly. It's this and Trump is trying to wade this, trying to push him aside, trying to parry the question. But Bear just keeps pressing him. That's his only preoccupation. He doesn't care about any settlement, peace, or anything. When are you going to apply pressure on? When are you going to apply sanctions on Putin? So just watch um, this interview.
Going to go to Turkey. Putin doesn't show. Zelensky shows. What do you think?
No, I was never scheduled to go.
No, you weren't scheduled, but you were talking about maybe you would go if it all came together.
But I tell you what,
So what do
I
you
would
think?
not have wanted to disappoint UAE because that was
Yeah,
my
big
stuff.
deal.
And if I went to Turkey, I couldn't go here, and it would have been very hard for me to say I'm not doing it.
On the substance, what do you think's going through Putin's mind? You know, you said get to the table. You said stop bombing. He hasn't stopped bombing. He's not at the table. And what do you think is happening?
Well, he is at the table, and he wanted this meeting. And I always felt there can't be a meeting without me because I don't think.
Notice that he says he's not at the table. Trump corrects him. He is at the table. There are negotiations taking place. So again, Brett Baer is just peddling fake news. Oh, he's not at the table, as if he has to be personally at the table.
The deal's going to get through. There's a lot of hatred on both sides. I have a very good relationship with Putin. I think we'll make a deal. We have to get together, and I think we'll probably schedule it because I'm tired of having other people go and meet and everything else. And with that being said, I think Steve Witkoff has done an incredible job. But it's a very tough job, and it's a job that, because of position, that I think I'm the only one that's going to be able to do that one, and I think we'll do it fast. I think Putin is tired of this whole thing. He's not looking good, and he wants to look good. Don't forget, this was supposed to end in 1 week, and if he didn't get stuck in the mud with his army tanks all over the place, they would have been in Kiev in about 5 hours.
He forgot how to say
The javelins. Do you remember who gave the javelins? Was it Barack Hussein Obama? No, it was Donald Trump gave the javelins.
Do you think your perception of it has changed? Is Putin now the obstacle to peace in your mind?
Look, I had a real rough session with Zelensky because I didn't like what he said. And
So notice Brett Baer asked him, "Is Putin the obstacle to peace?" And Trump doesn't go bite that. He said, "Oh yeah, I had a really bad session with Zelensky." So it's so it doesn't say, well, everything with Brett Baer and with all journalists, it's always this personal thing. It's personalized. It's all about Putin. Is Putin the obstacle to peace? And then he says, yeah, but I had this rough meeting with Zelensky.
he was not making it easy. And I always said he doesn't have the cards, and he doesn't have the cards. And, I'm being honest. He doesn't have the cards. You're dealing with a massive army, and you're dealing with somebody that's brave, that had great equipment.
But I haven't seen you get personal. On True Social, you said, Vladimir, stop. He hasn't stopped. And you had once said that maybe you need to look at other things like sanctions or banking.
Okay, so
because maybe they need to be pressured in a different way.
and I'll be
And do you-
doing that if
and do you think that
I
it's
don't want to
time?
see 5,000 people. Outside of the money, which is a big deal, but the money is the money. The money we can make up. I can make up the money on one trip like this. Okay, I mean, think of it. This trip, I made 12 times the money that we're talking about. I made that money in a few days. I've always been good.
But it's not about the money, it's about pressuring Putin, right? I mean,
No, but I've always been good with money. I make money. In 4 days, I made 12 times what we spent in Ukraine. So the money is the money.
He's not interested in Ukraine, George.
No, he's not. He really isn't. He really isn't.
Not interested.
Yeah.
He
That,
he wants Brett Blair to say, no president has ever made so much money. That's right, Brett. No one is like me. That's what he wants.
that's it. Yeah. That's right.
excuse me, pissed away. I hated to see that checks were sent for $60 billion. Every time Zelensky, I think he's the greatest salesman in the world, far better than me. Zelensky, he comes to Washington, he walks out with 100 billion every time he came, 100 billion, 100 billion. Now his abilities were shrinking because the last time I only got 60 billion. But Congress is very upset about it. You know, they're saying, where is all this money going? And I'm focused on, we said checks. We don't know. We said just checks. We said just cash. Where is it? The European.
But notice his exasperation with Zelensky. You know, he obviously he detests Zelensky. You know, and that's the mentality of the rich person. A rich guy hates having somebody pulling at his sleeve. I'd like some more money, please. Can you give me more money? And he hates that. And he's saying, hey, this money is pissed away. He's saying it's pissed away. And it's just it doesn't suit him. It's money going out of the door. He wants money coming in. I mean that's his mentality. You know, he hates money going out of the door.
Have been very badly hurt by this. They spent a lot of money also. They spent 100 billion. We spent 350. It shouldn't be that. It should have been the other way around. But
you're going to put the screws to Putin.
They have not been treated right by anybody. This is a war that they're, you know, spending a lot of money on. We've been treated worse than them because we had a
Trump is filibustering.
He is filibustering, but he's not answering Brett Baer's question. You know, he knows perfectly. Brett Baer's now asked him several times, "Are you going to put pressure on Putin?" And he's filibustering.
Yeah, but George, just like you said, I mean, Trump is prioritizing what's important to him.
Yes.
Okay, Ukraine isn't important to him at all. Okay,
No.
It's that person nagging on his sleeve. Okay,
Right.
Russia is far more important to him in the broad scheme of things, dealing with all kinds of issues around the world.
Right.
He wants, I think it's a fool's errand at this point, but he thinks he can flip Russia. Okay, and he doesn't want to hear about Ukraine's problems. And the one thing he brings up all the time, and this is not just knee-jerk repetition on his part, he genuinely thinks this is a European problem. Why are you hectoring me?
That's right. That's right.
I mean, we know that. We know that.
Right.
Because, well, he said about Crimea in the first campaign.
Right.
He said, well, that's the Europeans should figure that out. I'm paraphrasing. That's a European problem.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's right. And he thinks the Europeans, and he rightly, the Europeans are trying to drag me into their war. And we know, I mean, like, you know, when we read out these comments from Macron and Starmer and Merz and before that Scholz and Baerbock, we know that's exactly what they're trying to do. And Trump knows that this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get me involved in their wars. And I don't want to do it. It doesn't interest me. It has nothing to do with America.
President. And if I can solve that problem, and it's a bad problem, because I will tell you, Putin, it was the apple of his eye. He never would have done it if I were president. He never, ever would have done it. 100%. I think you even, most people, actually even Democrats say that it wouldn't have happened. But we inherited a mess, okay? I think it's going to get solved. But you know that Putin wanted the whole thing. He didn't want a piece. He didn't want a chunk. He wanted the whole thing. Somebody said, well, what do we get out of it in terms of, let's say, Ukraine?
Right.
You know what they get out of it? A large portion of the country.
It's just Senator Lindsey Graham has 73 co-sponsors on this bill to sanction Russian oil and anybody who buys Russian oil. He's making the pitch for the bill saying, why should China get the benefit of cheap oil from Russia as Putin continues the war? At some point, there has to be leverage on Putin. And I assume that you've talked about it.
Nobody uses leverage better than me. Look what I did to Iran.
So it's changing.
It's not changing. I always had that. I will use that if I have to. I'd rather not use that. By the way, that's a big deal. I just put it on Venezuela. It's secondary sanctions, it's called. And I just did it with Venezuela.
And you could do it with Iran, too.
I just did it with Iran. It's basically if you buy oil from Iran, you can't do business with the United States. And you see the ships just leaving that port. You know, in Venezuela, it was amazing.
So why not do it with Russia?
You had to see well, I will. If I do, I honestly, I will. If we're not going to make a deal, we're going to see whether or not this is Turkey time. You know, this is now we're talking Turkey, and we'll see what happens.
He doesn't know what he's going to do, George.
What?
He doesn't know what he's going to do.
No, he doesn't. But I do think, I mean, everybody just picked on this portion right of this when he said, well, yeah, I'll do it, you know, it's Turkey time, and I will, you know, if I don't have an agreement. But the fact is, he was constantly badgered. He didn't want to answer this question. And Breadbed just kept pressing him and pressing him and pressing him. Well, why don't you do it? Why don't you do it? I said, well, yeah, I will if I have to, but I'd rather not do it. I prefer not to do it.
And tell me what you think, okay? Because this gets into this kind of what kind of vibe that Trump is presenting here. He doesn't. I think he has such a personal dislike for Zelensky. He doesn't want Zelensky to win.
I think so. I agree. I think it's quite visceral. The fact is, even this, he went into this whole tirade against Zelensky. So, he was like, oh, what about putting pressure on Putin? He said, hey, look, this guy, he's this great salesman, and he's just walking out with all this money, and we have no idea where all this money is going. It's like, he just takes, here's another 100 million, another 100 million. It's clear that he really does dislike him. Now, the problem, I think, with him, and it's obvious that it's awfully difficult to get anywhere in America. I mean, when Brett Baer mentioned that Lindsey Graham has got these 73 co-sponsors of this sanctions bill, it may be that it's veto proof. I mean, maybe that Trump would probably, I think he would veto it because he doesn't want, he's the president. He doesn't want his hands tied. That it happened during his first term, and then they will override his veto. So that could well happen. So
that's the nuclear option. I don't think that Trump will even let the party go there. This is just upping the ante. This is just I think Trump would be very angry if Lindsey Graham actually went through it. I think this is a ploy because his wrath. No more golf games with you, okay? Right. And Trump doesn't like quarreling within the interesting party quarrels out in front. He's got too many other things on his mind, and this is going to be a real news. I really would like to know what Trump and Witkoff thought about Lindsey Graham being in Turkey.
Right. No, that's right. That's right.
Look, everybody. I mean, Trump could have said, Lindsey, step away, okay? Right. But he can't stop Lindsey Graham from going.
Right.
He can't. All right.
No, that's right. I mean, you may be right that it won't happen. It did happen during his first term, but that was a different time. However, I mean, I think there's all sorts of characters on Capitol Hill whose tongues are hanging out to do this to Trump. They get the sanctions in. Trump will veto, and then they're going to override his veto. You're right. This will just infuriate Trump as far as Lindsey Graham is concerned. But on the other hand, I mean, these people are absolutely nuts. I mean, they're so driven by this hatred for Russia. I mean, even look at this Brett Baer. I mean, all he can do, there's nothing there about, hey, what will it take to settle? What are the terms on which we can settle?
Yeah, I mean, why
what pressure are you going to apply to Putin?
Exactly. Brett Baer, why don't you ask the following question? What would be a fair peace, Mr. President?
Right.
You can't do that.
Right.
Because fair would mean giving credence to the Russian position somehow, okay? Right. And you can't do that. You simply can't do that. No. It's not on cable TV. You cannot do that.
No, that's right. So all of it is, we're going to apply pressure with a view to what? I mean, it's like what this Putin's going to come around. Putin's going to come, to the negotiating table. It hasn't happened all this time. Why would the next batch of sanctions be any more effective than the previous batches of sanctions?
Well, and George, these secondary of this magnitude, that's going to upend whatever progress Trump has made with tariffs. Okay, because he's had to backstep on that one, and maybe that was part of the strategy. We never know with this guy, but you want to take on China
Right.
over this? I mean, the implications of that are enormous.
Well,
Okay.
yeah,
And of course, the Chinese will absolutely, under no circumstances, adhere to that kind of outside meddling in its domestic affairs and economy. I mean, it's just purely unacceptable. I mean, it's just going to compound Trump's problems.
right. No, what Lindsey Graham is proposing is 500% tariffs on all purchases of Russian oil, gas, and uranium, all of them. So it's 500% tariffs on China, 500% tariffs on India, and everybody else. What I find hilarious is the media are going to love this. So suddenly, after all the hysteria about the Trump tariffs, oh my God, he's bringing the economy, the world economy, to a grinding halt. Suddenly, they'll be celebrating these 500% tariffs. Oh, fantastic! Great. Now we're putting real pressure on Putin. I thought tariffs cause inflation. I thought tariffs cause recession and everything. But suddenly, tariffs are a good thing. I will guarantee that this is exactly the media will be. That's it. This is really great. This is really applying the pressure. Suddenly, tariffs are great.
You're right. You're right. I just think that Trump would see this as just a shot across the bow. That this is, and he is the president of the United States. Okay. So again, I mean, the left will love this because this will be another fissure inside the Republican Party, and Trump will not take that well. No way. No way at all.
No. And it'll be catastrophic for the Republican Party because it's really going to divide the Republicans. And essentially, what Lindsey Graham will be doing is co-opting the Democrats. So he's going to get all the Democrats, every single one of them on board for this sanctions, and whatever half of the Republicans or 2/3 of the Republicans, they say, well, you're splitting the party and joining the Democrats. This is absolutely disgusting, and I can't see Lindsey Graham surviving this. I mean, he always has tough re-election battles, and if he does this, probably Trump is not going to do anything to help him get reelected. This will probably just break him.
I don't know. Do you think Lindsey's going to run again? I mean, I know they all go into their 90s and stuff like that, but
well, they don't really have anything else in their lives. I mean, these are professional politicians. They've never really done anything else. I mean, this is their how long was Mitch McConnell? He's been a politician ever.
I think he wasn't he a senator in the Roman Senate?
Something like that, exactly.
He was a Roman senator, I think.
Yeah. I think he was first elected to the Senate. I think Ronald Reagan was still president when he was elected to the Senate. So that goes back a long, long way. So yeah, but these people, I mean, they don't have anything else other than this job, and of course they make a lot of money at being senators, so it's very lucrative. The one problem is that they sometimes have these awkward primaries, and then sometimes they just go wrong. You have a strong challenger and then you're out. So I don't know whether you're right. I don't know whether Lindsey Graham is really going to go through with this. I mean, it would seem to be suicidal for him to do it, but he's issuing these threats.
Yeah, but going back to the Bret Baier interview, again, and I welcome being challenged here. I still don't think Trump knows what he wants to do.
Right.
Okay? But we don't know what he wants to do, but we do know what he doesn't want to do.
Right.
He doesn't want to give the Europeans a win because he hates them. Okay? And well, the hate is mutual. Okay?
Yes.
Okay? Okay,
right.
that's both sidism there.
That's right. No question. He knows that they all plotted against him. They plotted against him back in 2016. They plotted against him during his presidency. They plotted against him post-presidency, and they're still plotting against him. They're still colluding with the opposition in Washington. So he hates them. He hates all their economic policies, against the United States, and he knows what they're trying to do. You're absolutely right. He doesn't want to give them a win. He doesn't want to give Zelensky a win. He's trying to figure out some way to do it. And I think, one thing he's obviously trying to do is to have this meeting. If only he can get this one-on-one meeting with Putin, maybe they can somehow get some kind of an agreement. I mean, I think that's how he's thinking.
I think, when we think about how Trump thinks, we always get ahead of our skis. Right. There's a number of ways to do this. You and I have talked about many times. Call a pan-European security conference. Okay, that's one, which I think is actually a really good idea. Okay, number two, Istanbul. Why are they meeting in Istanbul? Because they met there the first time in 2022.
Right.
Why can't Trump or somebody explain to him, here's another way out, Mr. President. It laid the foundations of a peace. We just need to upgrade it.
Right.
And if Trump were to say, look, they were that far away. Right. Okay, now let's go through with it. Okay. Right. The Ukrainians agreed to this, and this. Okay. And the Russians, this. And now we have to upgrade it for the present. Okay. After 3 years of a war I want to see come to an end. Right. Smart people around him, and they're not very many. Right. That's how you sell this, saying there is already an agreement there.
Right. Yes.
But what about Zelensky? No, his government agreed to this.
Yep.
I don't know how hard of a sell that would be, because you and I think about this way too much. I mean, does Trump even know that they almost had a peace agreement? Does he know that? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good.
I mean, what do you think? What do you think about that?
No, I think it's a very good idea. I think that's a good idea. I think the big conference along the Helsinki 2.0 security conference involving everybody on the European continent. I think that's a good idea. He knows that he is being dragged into doing something he doesn't want to do, and that's the problem. I mean, and that's why he was constantly parrying Bret Baier, because he knows this. This is what you want me to do. This is what the media, this is every single journalist who interviews me wants me to do. That's what Zelensky wants me to do. That's what the Europeans who are nagging me. He doesn't want to go there. He wants to end this war. So he has to somehow figure out a way to end this. Because if he doesn't, he is going to get himself dragged into this. I mean, it becomes inevitable. Just one way or another, they're going to drag him into this quagmire.
Okay, so Bret Baier has probably the same level of information, insight, that's a generous word, to this conflict, okay? Trump needs to outdo them, okay? That's what he needs to do. So Bret, let me try to understand, Bret, what you're trying to say here. You just want a good deal for Ukraine. Well, we've been doing it for 3 years. And the more we try to get them a good deal, the more it hurts them. We have to stop this. People in the media, like yourself, Bret, Ukraine is hemorrhaging because of what you want for Ukraine.
Yes.
Well, why don't we have to let the Ukrainians, without this collusion with Western Europeans that don't lose one soldier. they write checks that they don't have money for. They go into debt. Okay. So, I mean, haven't we been through all of this before? Okay. I'm trying to do something different.
Yes.
Now, and that is a much more compelling one. I just don't think Trump has a grasp.
Well, this is very interesting.
A lot of the details.
Right. This is very interesting because whom does he listen to? He doesn't listen to Rubio. He doesn't respect Rubio. He doesn't listen to Rubio. He probably gets some ideas from Witkoff. Witkoff tells him his personal impressions in talking to Putin, some things that Putin brought up. I think if you talk to Tucker Carlson would give him, very good informed comment. Tucker Carlson has followed this very closely. So I think Tucker Carlson would absolutely tell him what he should talk about in this conversation with Putin. I think he talks to Steve Bannon. I think also Bannon is quite well informed, and Bannon will absolutely tell him, you are getting dragged into this war. There's the plot against you to get you into this war. You need to cut them off now. And so I think if he listens to Tucker Carlson, if he listens to Bannon, then I think, you know, we could get somewhere. If he doesn't, then I think, you know, this is step by step. You know, he's going to get sucked in, and then he will have failed. I mean, this will obviously be a failure, and it's going to be a drag on his presidency. So that's why. Now, let me ask you then a question. Do you think there will be a summit, a personal, a one-on-one meeting between Trump and Putin? Okay.
If it were to happen, it'd be very anomalous. Okay, I mean that's not Russian statecraft. That's not Russian diplomacy. It just they would just say no. It just is.
Well, they had
really...
they had a meeting in Helsinki, which of course went very badly. That was in 2018. But that was just a kind of a spontaneous. Well, it wasn't quite spontaneous.
Well, that was kind
there
of
wasn't a definite agenda there.
Right. It was, you know, nice to meet you. Okay. I mean, you know, that was breaking. It was an icebreaker.
It was an icebreaker, and
that froze up.
Right. But it went very badly. And that because, you know, because there was no agenda. But they might. I mean, they might work out an agenda. I mean, if they can at least agree upon an agenda to discuss, then I think that a meeting might take place.
Okay, I'm going to add an extra layer or corollary to what I just said. If we, as you and I have talked about many times before, if Trump were to propose a pan-European conference
Right.
and meet with Putin and just say, you know, does this work for you? Of course it would work. Okay. That way you have a meeting,
Right.
you have a very broad agenda and,
Right.
and I think a positive agenda, and believing that going big can solve small, and Trump has the juice.
Right.
He can get all the Europeans there, no doubt about it. Okay, and that way, Trump truly looks like a mediator. See, he's stuck as a co-belligerent. He doesn't know how to get out of that.
Right.
Okay, and his people around him won't let it go. That's their last thing that
Right.
last
No,
thing they got on him. Okay, because the United States is a co-belligerent. It is the reason why this conflict started. Okay, now if Trump were to say, you know, this is just a continental mess for everybody, and we have to do the hard work and meet and start hammering out a new future. I think he can sell that to his base in a nanosecond.
Right. No, he can sell that to his base. I mean, you're right about the co-belligerent, but there are ways to get around it, because the United States, you know, let's say in the Middle East, you know, United States was a co-belligerent. I mean, the United States was constantly helping Israel, and, you know, in a variety of conferences on the Middle East, it was also a broker, you know, a mediator. I mean, Oslo. The United States was a mediator between Israel and the Palestinians, and for a while Oslo was going somewhere, but none, so that way Camp David again, you know, United States was a mediator. I mean, so there have been precedents in the past where the United States was a co-belligerent and a mediator. You know,
but
back in the Nixon Kissinger era, when there was also co-belligerent and a mediator.
I can't disagree with that, but there is a significantly different circumstance. These are two great powers on the verge of war, or
Right.
I would say at war. And basically, what this needs to be is a peace conference, not to resolve the Ukraine issue per se, but to resolve the ongoing conflict between the United States and Russia. And you know, you can say a lot of things about Trump. Trump does not want that. He doesn't want to get any closer to that, because he knows if he gets dragged into it, that is again very much on the agenda. And I mean that very, very seriously. Okay. Again, so it has to be explained to him is that this is not resolving
Right.
the Ukraine problem. This is resolving the problem the United States and Russia have.
Right.
And that is the really 30,000 feet from the air picture of what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's right. Um, and so, yeah. I mean, I try to be optimistic and try to think, well, maybe they'll get something out of it. Maybe they'll agree to a meeting. I mean, I take your point. I don't know whether the Russians necessarily, but
George, look, it's never taken into account, at least, on Judge Knapp and all of these other things, okay? There's a lot of pressure on Putin to produce a positive result.
right,
A lot of blood and treasure has been lost here,
right.
and it's not trivial. It's not trivial. And they will go the distance. They will go the distance for their security. And it's not about this providence, or make it to the Dnieper River and all that. I hate all of that minutia talk. It's just nonsense. It has nothing to do with resolving this conflict. Okay, so there has to be this recognition is that there is a lot of pressure in Russia to have this conflict resolved, but positively. Okay, and if it can't get now, then 3 more months, then 6 more months, because
Well, that's where the question is, well, that's fine. You want to get it resolved, but what time frame are we thinking of? End of the summer, end of the year, end of next year, the end of the year after that. That's another thing. I mean, is it worth continuing year after year after year? I mean, if we can say, okay, well, I think the war will probably be settled by the end of the year, then you say, okay, well, then let's continue. We'll get it done by the end of the year. But if it isn't, and in a year's time, we're going to still be in the same place, then, it is a matter of doing a kind of cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah, I mean,
saying, is it worth continuing for increasingly diminishing returns and, and a bit, particularly heavy losses of life?
one of the big unknowns in all of this is that we have all this hyperbole over the last 3. Russia's running out of missiles. Russia's running out of tanks. Russia's blah, blah, blah. Okay. I have no idea.
Right.
Okay. I'm not going to weigh in on this type of thing. You can always, there are dial-up analysts that'll tell you anything you want to hear. Okay. And we've heard this for years and years. Does Russia have the capacity to continue on for another year? I have no doubt about that. Do they have the capacity indefinitely? No one has capacity indefinitely. No one does. Okay. And what we hear from the Ukrainian side, I'm equally skeptical. Okay. That's one of the things, I have all of these telegram things and, at best, everybody 50% at best. Okay. And then a lot of other stuff, I just roll my eyes like, well, maybe that's true. Okay. So this capacity issue is really hard to gauge. When Moon of Alabama came out with something, I think it was yesterday, there was a prisoner exchange.
Right.
It was also, and it was into something that he pointed out, fallen soldiers. And the Russians returned far more Ukrainian dead than the Ukrainian returned of Russian dead. And one of the reasons for that, it doesn't talk about attrition rate on both sides. It's just that Ukrainians are not collecting bodies.
That's right.
Okay?
That's exactly it.
Okay.
That's
They're not collecting them.
They're not collecting the bodies. Yeah.
And the Russians are. So there's a lot of these things going on that, it's a state secret. Okay. I mean, I'm not like, denying, I know something. It's a state secret. Nobody knows. Okay.
Right. No, I mean, I think the question arises whether does Trump offer an opportunity that the Russians might say this is a great opportunity to bring this thing to a conclusion, obviously a conclusion that satisfies Russia's interests, because then the alternative is that the war goes on. And
well, I mean, George,
the war goes on, that could go on for a long time, and that's always problematic. Not just because of the length of time, but the longer a war goes on, the more things can go wrong. Lots of things can
absolutely,
go
wrong. And we're seeing it right now. As far as the complete territorial control of the 4 oblasts, I personally think that's negotiable.
Yeah, I
think
so too.
I think that's negotiable.
Yeah.
What is not negotiable, NATO membership, NATO infrastructure in Ukraine, those are not negotiable. And I think again, we would have to be very, very serious and capable in looking at the demographics. I mean, for the most part, the Russians have a great deal of where Russians speakers live in Ukraine, a good chunk of it, okay?
Right.
There are other parts of it, and that will be the goal if this goes on. But I tend to think no NATO, no NATO infrastructure.
Right.
Now we're talking. Now we're talking.
Right.
Okay. The rest of the stuff I think can be
I agree, which is why they're going to tell if in this conversation with Trump, I think Putin will say, take off the table all this business of issuing security guarantees for Ukraine. That simply just not this whole idea that we're going to tolerate British, French, German, Italian forces in Ukraine. That's it. That's just off the table. There's no way at all. You know, we might accept United Nations peacekeepers from neutral countries, but absolutely we're not going to tolerate, you know, this whole security guarantees that Starmer talks about. That's just off the table.
Well, there's a way to address that. I don't know how effective it would be, but you could have the UN Security Council where all members vote on some kind of security understanding for Ukraine.
Right.
That would be a concession on the Russian part, definitely.
Right.
Okay. That can be addressed. How effectively, I mean, would it be like kind of the Budapest memorandum where, you know, it's kind of opaque? I'm not really sure. But that's a win for Trump as well, okay?
Right.
It's the goal, everyone, isn't to secure Ukraine. The goal is to get out.
That's right.
the
And
goal.
this is where Trump, I mean, if Trump takes some deal like this, and however much Zelensky and the Europeans start screaming and so on, Trump, if he has the will, he can get through this. He can get through this. Well, that's my position. That's the position of the United States, and I'm going to stick with it. And there's nothing really much the Europeans can do. They know ultimately they are dependent on the United States. They, you know, without the United States, they can't really do anything. Zelensky knows without the United States, he can't do anything. So ultimately, if we can work something out, you know, like as we were talking about, you know, whether this pan-European security conference in Istanbul, or, you know, some vague UN Security Council guarantees, whatever, if Trump puts his mind to it and says, okay, that's the deal that the United States is going with, then ultimately they will have to accept this. There's just nothing they can do. The whole idea that Starmer, Macron, and the rest are going to go on their own and issue any guarantees for Ukraine ain't going to happen. There's no way they're going to do that.
At the moment, as we're speaking, a little bit of glimmer of light is that Trump hasn't caved on the ceasefire. He's not there. He's not there, which is really, really good. And it's really, really good because Trump has not come out so forcefully and unilaterally about it. That's what keeps the Russians at the table.
Right. No, that's
okay.
That's right. Exactly. So,
and somebody around Trump knows that. You go down that path, and then you shut a door.
That's right.
Trump wants to keep doors open for how, and again, never underestimate his sense of mission. You know, I mean, Mount Rushmore is waiting for me. Okay. And you have, it's kind of like, you know, it happens in all facets of life. You know, you have an idea and the only way you're going to get it through is to convince the boss that good idea is the boss's idea. Okay. And that's how you're going to have to deal with Trump. Istanbul upgrade. Okay, Pan-European Conference, a UN Security Council on security guarantees for Ukraine. All of these are, George is right, they're all doable if Trump throws his weight behind it. But what the Europeans want to do, ceasefire.
That's right.
And it's a dead end. It's a dead end.
And they know it's a dead end.
They know it's a dead end.
And Trump knows that they know it's a dead end. And so he knows exactly their machinations. And you know, and that's why he gets so angry. Because even when with Brett Baer, and he said, well, is Putin the problem? And then he goes off. What about Zelensky? He said he didn't answer that question. He said it was Zelensky who is this constantly coming here and getting more and more arms. And if you said about the Europeans, you said exactly the same thing about the Europeans, that this is what they're constantly trying to do. They are constantly trying to get me involved in this way, and that's why he's trying to avoid this, the ceasefire. He's avoided that talk. And he's avoided all of the security guarantees and all of these things. He has managed, and it has a style. This filibustering style is actually quite successful because he can get through an interview without actually giving anything away. He hasn't said anything.
Well,
they can nail him on.
Trump's filibustering style is unique because he won't do it with Fox, but he'll do it with everyone else. And what are your ratings right now? Okay. And I'm the president. I'm the president.
Right.
You're the journalist.
That's
okay.
Right. That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
No other president has ever done that before.
That's right.
When we talked on Friday, and so a number of things have happened. I'm on the positive side of the ledger, but just by a smidgen. If there's going to be another meeting, that means something's happening, okay? And the Russians are still interested, okay?
Right.
Trump is very interested,
right?
Okay, because I think you would agree with me. I think Trump will agree with me. There's a window here.
There's a window.
It's not going to stay open for much longer.
That's right, and I think that's why, if there is to be a meeting, a one-on-one meeting between Trump and Putin, I don't think it'll just be on Ukraine. I think
exactly.
That's right. The Russians will say, "Yeah, we need to discuss all manner of security issues, including, of course, in how do we improve Russian-American relations." So everything has to be discussed. That could happen. I mean, we'll see. But at least one should try and be a little bit positive and think that, well, maybe they can move forward, because otherwise then these things just have this inexorable logic of their own, and then we basically just go down the drain.
It's reasonable. It's reasonable to have some positive outlook. It is reasonable for the following reasons. In this podcast alone, George and I don't do a warm-up here. We just go into it. We've already demonstrated there are a number of avenues both leaders can go down. Okay, that means progress can be made. They have to be, but they have to be pursued. See, Trump is he's like a rat in a maze. They want to control where he's going. Trump needs to jump above the board and say, no. And you hold the Zelensky's hand, okay? For the time being, you guys like to do it. You like to hug a lot. It's weird, okay?
That's right.
But no, I've got bigger things to do.
That's right.
Because Europe's security crisis is a drain on my resources.
That's right.
And this has to be resolved. So you guys, you got to get in a room. It's going to be like a conclave in the Vatican. Nobody leaves, okay?
Right. Yeah.
No, what I'm saying is there are avenues to move forward. It's just that why is it only this podcast where it's being discussed?
Right. No, that's right. I think it's very interesting. Between now and tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time, just about the time that we'll be going.
Yeah, I really hope there'll be something, because I have to do a recording on Tuesday, and now I'm hanging on, by threads, because I don't know what to do, because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
That's right. But between now and then, I think it'll be interesting whom he talks to. I don't think he's going to talk to Rubio. I don't think he respects Rubio very much. I don't think he's going to talk to Hegseth. I don't think he respects Hegseth very much. He may talk to J.D. Vance. I think he may talk to Tucker Carlson. He may talk to Steve Bannon. And I think they will all tell him that this is your opportunity to basically cut America out of this. You've now laid the foundations for removing the United States. And if you don't take this opportunity, this is going to sink your presidency. Because then, month after month goes by, and then as other people have said, it's Trump's war, and you're not able any longer, because once he sinks more and more into it, it's going to be ever more difficult to get out of it. It's just going to be, right now there is still a lot of goodwill, and there's still a room for diplomacy. That he's forced the diplomacy that we've had now. He forced it. There was no diplomacy before Trump. I mean, he forced everyone the Europeans at least, to pretend that they're interested in diplomacy. They're of course not interested, but he forced it. If he doesn't take this opportunity, then there's not going to be any more diplomacy.
Well, the stakes are so much higher, George, because who else is watching this? The Iranians are watching this. Can Trump get a deal? He talks about deals all the time,
Right.
and maybe he can do it in terms of real estate and whatnot.
Right.
Okay, fine.
Right.
But I mean, Iran's going to be looking at his negotiating strategy and how he wants to resolve an issue that is of concern to him. The Israeli lobby in the United States is going to be watching very carefully as well, because the lobby wants to see Trump falter, okay, to fail. And the Iranians want to know, this is the guy, Obama signed an agreement with us. You come into office, you renege it, and now you want to come back. I mean, what's the consistency with this guy? And there is none. Okay. Trump has to do that. He has to show who is the boss, and he is the boss.
Right.
Okay. And that's why at the very, very beginning, I asked you, George, is it possible the Europeans could get the riot act? That's where my money is right now.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of interesting.
I mean, if he wants to succeed, he's going to have to do it.
He will have to do it. No, he will have to do it. I mean, it's interesting how he's sort of framed it. He's going to have first a conversation with Putin, then he's going to talk with Zelensky, and then with Zelensky, he's going to talk to the Europeans. So it's very interesting how he's going to talk with Zelensky. He's going to talk to the Europeans, and if he tells them, if he announces, well, I think we're going to have this summit with Putin, then they're just going to have to lump it. They're just going to have to tolerate it. He's much more, I mean, look, I don't know whether this meeting with Putin is going to take place. I mean, I hope, but we don't know. But I don't think he's going to allow. If it happens, he's not going to allow what happened in Helsinki. I mean, he's learned his lesson from that. I think he's much shrewder and much tougher now than he was then. So he's not going to allow the media to hijack any summit the way they hijacked Helsinki. So we don't know, but we can just hope that they're going to have some kind of a meeting in the future.
It can go.
Yeah,
again, there's a number of trajectories here. If the meeting with Putin is to talk about big issues,
all right, which I think
not just Ukraine, but other issues,
right.
I think it can fly. If it's going to go, they're going to meet in Reykjavik to resolve Ukraine, it will go nowhere. Okay.
No, I think no, they're not going to.
The Europeans have to be given the riot act.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. It's in that passive voice, it's been decided, gentlemen and lady, if you're there, this is the direction we're going to go. Right. And don't look for a backstop. I'm not interested in backstopping anyone. Okay. You had 3 years to get your agenda across the line, and you failed. Right. I'm not going to fail, and I'm not going to let you allow me to fail.
Exactly, which is what you want to do. Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's the kind of an ideal scenario for tomorrow. That's what he's going to.
Okay, this is what we're going to do, everybody. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have the live stream. I'm going to have my second computer right here. I'm going to have a number of news agencies. And so if something is announced while we're doing our live stream, we'll be able to break it to you. So that's my promise. I'll have another computer right here waiting for notifications and see if anything flies. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
All right, everybody. This is a part of our wrap up here, our mega wrap up on Sunday. This is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. And I know, buddy, I maybe in the second or third video. Okay, lady, go back to sleep.
So they say, tip jar. Well, I haven't heard anyone mention that. Yeah, but he's absolutely right. The tip jar situation needs addressing, a very serious. We need a global conference to address the tip jar crisis. So, yeah, so in order to avoid, getting the UN involved, it's better if everybody just gets whatever money they have, dunk it into the tip jar, whatever you have, coins, paper, whatever. And just, that'll keep Buddy happy for a while. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, we're going to keep the UN Security Council option on the back burner. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.